No Face Movement's April the 5th, 2019. What we're about to show you is the Democrats, how they're turning to a socialist and communist kind of party. And a lot of people are trying to bring down America's belief, America's ideals, freedom of speech. All right. And we're about to expose Bernie Sanders. Most likely Bernie Sanders started out as a Russian spy, and he doesn't lie. He says he's a democratic socialist, all right, folks? But socialism and communists, we're against it. We are America, folks. Our rights, our freedoms, our fathers, our grandfathers, brothers, sisters, whoever, they put their lives on the line to protect our freedom, folks, for hundreds of years. All right, folks. We're about to come and expose big media to how they control everything you see, false media, all that stuff. All right, folks. But right now, let's get into this. We're about to show you Democrats that are turning into socialists, and we're about to expose Bernie Sanders and his beliefs and how he met in 1965 with a Russian spy in Israel. All right, folks. This is the No Face Movement. Please like, share, hit that like button. Please share too. In this movie, documentary, it's called The Enemy from Within. And we're about to release that too. So here we go.
Democratic Socialists of America. Like all communists, DSA wants to abolish all private business and start a workers' revolution.
I'm a democratic socialist, probably because when I was 14, I read the Communist Manifesto, because I believe that the working class is an agent of revolutionary change, and that our society needs to see a revolutionary transformation.
Based on the theories of Italian communist Antonio Gramsci, DSA seeks communist revolution through infiltration of America's leading institutions, cultural, religious, and political. DSA has infiltrated both houses of Congress. In the House, they have allies like New York Congressman Jerry Nadler, Chicago Reps Danny Davis and Jan Schakowsky, Californians Karen Bass and Maxine Waters, Iowan Dave Loebsack, Eleanor Holmes Norton from the District of Columbia, Alan Grayson from Florida, John Lewis from Georgia, and Gwen Moore and Mark Pocan from Wisconsin. DSA's U.S. Senate friends include Barbara Mikulski from Maryland, Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, and Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey from Massachusetts.
DSA's greatest success has undoubtedly been presidential candidate Bernie Sanders.
We have 80 votes in Congress now. We have the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which Bernie founded.
Bernie Sanders claims to be a democratic socialist who wants America to be more like Sweden, Denmark, Norway.
He wants America to look more like Scandinavia.
That's right. And what's wrong with that?
Like most democratic socialists, Bernie Sanders is a liar and a communist.
Sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
In 2014, Sanders endorsed longtime Communist Party supporter Chuy Garcia's bid for the Chicago mayoralty. Sanders spoke alongside Scott Marshall, a leader of the Chicago Communist Party. In the early 1960s, Bernie Sanders studied in Chicago, where he joined the Young People's Socialist League and worked for the Communist Party-controlled Packing House Workers Union. In 1963, Bernie Sanders traveled to Israel as a guest of the pro-Soviet Hashemir Hitzat Youth Organization. Sanders worked on the Sha'ar Hamakim kibbutz, whose co-founder, Aharon Cohen, was in jail for spying for Moscow.
You see?
Sanders was later kicked out of the kibbutz for being too lazy. By 1972, Sanders was in Vermont and active in the far-left Liberty Union Party. In 1980, Sanders backed the presidential campaign of pro-Cuba Socialist Workers' Party candidate Andrew Pulley. In 1985, while serving as mayor of Burlington, Vermont, Bernie Sanders was in Nicaragua celebrating the 6th anniversary of the brutal communist Sandinista dictatorship.
Bernie Sanders visited the Soviet Union on his honeymoon.
In 1988, Sanders and his new bride honeymooned in the then Soviet Union, which at the time was still threatening the United States with nuclear annihilation. Sanders negotiated with communist authorities to make Yaroslavl, near Moscow, a sister city of Burlington, Vermont.
Could you imagine if you visited Nazi Germany before the war ended, and then you're going to run for president here? You don't think there'd be questions?
In 1989, Sanders traveled to Cuba, where he attempted to meet communist dictator Fidel Castro. He later praised Castro for his wonderful government-run healthcare.
Just because Ronald Reagan dislikes these people does not mean to say that the people in their own nations feel the same way.
In his first congressional race, Bernie Sanders was personally endorsed by journalism icon and Democratic Socialist of America supporter I.F. Stone. Stone praised Bernie Sanders for his pragmatic socialism. Stone was later identified as a paid Soviet spy. Bernie Sanders has worked with DSA for more than 30 years.
It was DSA money and volunteers that put Bernie Sanders into the Congress in the first place and then into the US Senate.
The DSA was the backbone of Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. Labour for Bernie was run by DSAer Rand Wilson, and People for Bernie was led by another DSA comrade, Charles Lenchner.
And we feel the Bernie Sanders movement was a very positive movement. What it did in this country, where the term socialism was a term that was kind of had a negative connotation, suddenly that's been transformed. And we talk to young people especially, and they're all interested in socialism now.
Do you think Bernie Sanders could pass an FBI background security check? DSA's closest ally in the takeover of the Democratic Party is the smaller but highly influential Communist Party USA.
I remember going with another comrade to meet with Howard Berman, who was a Democratic Party congressman, and giving him our demands and asking for him to include that in his program, and that we in exchange would provide campaign workers who would go door to door and help him get reelected.
Did he realize you were a Communist Party member?
Oh, yeah.
So the Communist Party would go to a Democratic congressman and exchange for him promoting certain policies, you would help him get elected. There was a deal made. And was that a common thing in the Communist Party? Would they often cooperate with Democrats where they could?
Wherever they could, and they particularly targeted certain organizations. The ADA, Americans for Democratic Action, was a large pressure lobbying group within the Democratic Party in Southern California, and the Communist Party was very active in shaping the policy programs of that organization.